everyone. All right, week 3 already. We're almost halfway there at the end of, well, no, the middle of next week. So we got to get through this week and halfway through next week to be halfway there. So I think I'm maybe making us too excited already. But we're getting there. Anyway, hope things are going well. This should be a fairly straightforward video today. Nothing too much to introduce that's new. Just want to talk about a couple quick things and touch base with everybody, see how they're doing, and kind of point out a couple things that are going on this week. So let's take a look at what's happening this week in the semester. Let me actually go back to Canvas here. I will, let me see. All right, so we've got a couple things on the docket this week. Let me scroll down, and I should have had this pulled up already. Sorry about that. All right, so what do we have today? We have the weekly update, which you're actually watching right now. And I should say, this week for your discussion post, for your response, what I would like to hear about is some of the challenges that you've experienced writing paper 1, and then maybe some of the parts of it that you maybe enjoyed, if you did. If you didn't, you don't have to write about that. That's okay. I know sometimes writing about things you enjoy about writing papers kind of seems like, ugh, didn't write like anything about writing my paper. So if you could just write about the challenges, that's fine as well. So just post your response about that would be great. We do have a small little assignment. We don't have any additional reading this week, so that's kind of a relief. I did want to give you some space to actually work on paper number 1 instead of being bogged down with a lot of reading and stuff. So I kind of made sure that we adjusted the timing of different assignments just so you could dedicate a lot more time to your first paper. But you do have what's called a field problem, and that's from your book, actually. So let's take a look at what that is all about. So I'm taking a look at the module here, and the module describes it, and this is very similar to the language in the actual textbook. So this is actually taken from the textbook itself, but I've adapted it just a little bit to make it a little bit more amenable to the types of writing you might find. All right, so it says, from the letters to the editor section of your local newspaper or magazine, you can find this source online. Let's say you find something from the New York Times, or maybe you just, again, find something from your local newspaper. You could find it from a magazine that you often read. A lot of times magazines will really publish, letters from the readers and stuff. So you might want to find it there. Oh, my hair's like a mess today. It's always weird filming these videos and watching yourself do this. Anyway, so you're going to select a letter. You're going to actually select 2 letters. The first letter you're going to look at contains at least one argument. So somebody could be saying, I don't like that this restaurant opened up for these reasons, right? So you're going to find an argument in the paper that contains at least one argument. All right, and so you're going to say what that argument is by locating the conclusion and the premise, right? So these are things that you should have read about in the reading for up until this point, I should say. So you're going to do that. Then you're going to go through the letters again and find one that contains no argument at all. It could just be someone complaining about, I don't like how there aren't any stop signs in this town, blah, 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 right? Doesn't really have an argument. So you want to find an actual article that doesn't contain an argument at all. Now, sometimes I've had students in the past actually use 2 different letters from 2 different newspapers or 2 different magazines or something like that. That's completely fine. If you want to do that, I'm cool with it. But if you want to find it from the same paper, also fine. So you did that first one. You found one that contains at least one argument, and you're going to locate the conclusion and the premise. The second one, you're going to go through and find one that contains no argument at all. And what you're going to do is you're going to rewrite that letter. And you're going to rewrite it so it at least contains one argument, right? So you might say, well, going back to that little cranky example I just said, like, I don't like how this town doesn't have any stop signs. The reason I don't like why this town doesn't have any stop signs is because too many people get in accidents. Or people don't look where they're going, or people go too fast, or something like that. So you're going to actually make an argument in that rewrite. So what you're going to do is you're going to try to preserve as much of the original letter as possible. So you're going to stay on the same topic. So if you found one where somebody was complaining about not having stop signs in the town, you're not going to say, well, I wish that we had more ice cream shops. No, you're going to change it to say right on topic about stop signs. And again, these are just samples that I'm talking about right now. They could be completely different from the examples that I'm mentioning. But that's just an idea, right? of something you might find in your local newspaper. You're going to want to look specifically for the letters to the editor section. You might look for an op-ed section where a lot of people give their opinion about certain topics. Like in the New York Times, somebody might write an op-ed piece. That's not necessarily a letter to an editor. It's more somebody who writes opinion pieces for the newspaper, but I'm okay actually if you wanted to use that. Those tend to be much longer than the letters to the editor that you might find in a local newspaper or magazine. So if you're trying to rewrite it, you're going to be rewriting a lot. So if you're just thinking about time-wise, I would stick to something where someone's writing a letter to the editor. I think that's all you need to know about that specifically. But please do, because I hope that you find your source online where you're able to post a link to that, or maybe even screenshot it if you can't find a link, or if you find it actually like in a print copy, if you want to take a picture and post that picture with your assignment, that would be useful as well. So that's the field problem that you're working on. Let's take a look at a couple other things that you're doing for this week. You do actually have to go back to the questions that you posted the last week. Remember, you posted content questions and philosophical or deeper meaning questions, right? You just posted the questions. Now, for this week, you actually have to return to those questions, select somebody else's questions, and respond to them. So what you're going to do is you're going to go back to those discussion boards. In fact, if you're clicking through the modules, it'll just take you right there. And you're going to scroll through the different questions that people have posted, and you're going to respond to 2. You can respond to 2 of the same persons. You can respond to 1 question from one person and 1 question from another person. It doesn't matter. The only thing I don't want to see is you responding to your own questions. I do want you responding to somebody else's. Now, it could be a very similar question to the one that you asked, and that's okay, but just make sure that you are responding to somebody else's. So you're going to respond to 2 content questions and 2 philosophical or deeper meaning questions. So that's a total of 4 responses, 2 on each of the discussion boards. So you're going to be responsible for that. And you're going to respond as a comment underneath the question that was posted. All right? So you had that work to do. And then, let's see. Let me click through this module. I'm going to scroll all the way down here. Getting there. All right. Here we go. And then the final thing for this week is just a paper number 1 reminder, reminding you that the paper is due Sunday by 11:59 p.m., so right about midnight. Make sure that you do submit it by that time. Remember, it's Eastern Standard Time. If you are in a different time zone, make sure you do get it in on time. I do send confirmation emails letting you know that I have received your paper. So you do want to be on the lookout for those for those emails to make sure that I have received it. If you don't receive that confirmation email by 9 a.m. on Monday morning, I didn't get your paper. So it's very important that you do keep an eye out for that confirmation email. As I said in my very first video to you, that if you want to submit it on Canvas and submit it via email to me, totally fine. I have no problem if you want to double up. I like to do that as a person, like doubling up to make sure I cover all my bases. So if you want to be that kind of person, totally fine. If Canvas is not working, make sure that you just email it to me. I have no problem with that. Just send me an email with your paper as an attachment. Also, just make sure that you do submit it on time. Because again, as stated in the syllabus, as stated in my previous videos, I don't take late work. So you do really want to make sure that you submit it on time. Also, I encourage you, as you're working on your paper over the next week, save it on something like Dropbox or Google Drive. That way, if something happens where your computer crashes, or if you're out of town for unexpected reasons and you can't access your own computer, you can at least access something like Google Drive or Dropbox away from your own computer. Just because not having access to your own computer is not a valid reason not to submit this paper. So make sure you are familiarizing yourself if you're not familiar with different cloud storage units, just so you have access to your work. A couple different things I do want to cover in the last minute or so that I have you here. I do want to say really good job working on the discussion board posts. I have really enjoyed reading them. I did notice a lot of people actively engaging with subjective and objective argumentation in terms of the flight versus invisibility posts. Those were a lot of fun to read. I know it seems like a silly argument, but it does give us really good practice thinking about subjective versus objective argumentation. So really nice work doing that. And then I do want to cover a couple questions about paper number 1 that I've received. First of all, a couple people have asked questions about videos that describe the actual fallacy, if that counts, and it does not. What I mean by that is sometimes you'll see a video on YouTube that actually is somebody explaining what a fallacy is. So for example, if you find a video where someone's like, here's what a hasty generalization is, and they go through the definition and they explain it. That's not what I'm looking for. What I'm looking for is an example of the fallacy in action. So really they're not going to necessarily say, here's a hasty generalization and here you go. It's going to be an example of a hasty generalization in action, or an example of any of the other fallacies in action, not somebody explaining what that fallacy is. So if you look through the examples that I've posted, or if you look through some of the sample papers that are available, you'll see how the difference what I'm talking about there. And then another question I've also received is, sometimes there are different names for some of the different fallacies. Our book actually uses a lot of, plain English names, but a lot of times you might see like a Latin adaptation of that name. So for example, like the appeal to the person is often known as an ad hominem. And so you might see that pop up. So you want to just be aware that sometimes the names can be a little bit different. You might have, just like I said, the plain old English one that our book likes to use, which is great. Or you might have like the Latin name for it, which you might see. So just make sure you just double check with the book to see if there are any translation questions there, or if they use like a different phrase than what you might see online. But other than that, I think you should be okay. And as always, if you have questions about the paper or any other assignments that you've been doing this week, please just shoot me an email. I actually haven't gotten too many emails from people, which is nice because I don't have as many emails to answer, but is also, as a professor, slightly startling because I just would like, if you have questions, I would like you to feel comfortable asking those questions, and I'm always here to help you out if you have questions. So I guess that's it for this week. So work on paper number 1, work on the couple other assignments that you have throughout the week, and I'll start reading stuff, posting grades throughout the day. So have a good week.